Welcome friends to the 13th part of this series where we're creating a chat app in FlutterFlow and Supabase. In this video, we'll be seeing how we can implement the actual messaging functionality to allow users to send messages to each other in their chat groups. But before we do that, let's work on the home page first, which I forgot to work on in previous videos. So for our home page over here, we want to select the list view over here. And for this list view, under this backend query option, we want to add a query. Our query type will be a Supabase query, and we want to query the chats table over here. So the query type will be a list of rows, and for the filters, we want to filter where the chat members, and where the chat members list if it contains our authenticated user's user ID. So basically this query, what it does is that it checks whether our authenticated user's ID is inside the list of chat members over here. So basically it means that if the user is inside their chat, it will show the chat group over in this list view over here. If not, it just won't show anything. So we will just click on confirm and we'll create this backend query. And now we can see a bunch of different chat list tiles over here. One more thing we can do is we can add some padding in this container over here. So we can just add some bottom padding of, let's say, 8. Maybe let's add a bit more padding. Let's add padding of 16 instead. Okay, now let's link our widgets over here. For this circle image, it will be, scroll down, and the path of this circle image will be our chat rows, and it will be our chat image path over here. For this text over here, instead of hello world, the text property over here will be our chat rows, and it will be our chat name. And for the default variable, we can just leave it as space. For this text over here, what we wanted for this text over here was to be the last message over here. So we'll change the text parameter over here to be our last message. Default variable can be a space. And finally, for this last text over here, this will be the timestamp of the last message. So it'll be the last message time over here. For the available options, we can change to datetime format, and the datetime format we can choose relative. Default variable can be 0. And now we can click on confirm. So that's it for showing our available chat in our UI over here. One last thing we have to do in the home page is that whenever the user clicks on the container, we want to send them to our chat page. So we'll go to the action flow editor, and with the on tap action selected, we want to add a new action. And for this action, we want to navigate to, and we want to navigate to our chat page. And since we previously defined some page parameters for our chat page in the previous video, we want to pass these parameters. So we want to pass the group image parameter, and we want to pass our chat image over here. And for the group name, it will just be, we'll set the value to be the chat rows, and it will be the chat name. So now that's done. Whenever the user clicks on this, the user will be sent to the chat page corresponding to the chat group that he selected in the home page. Okay, now let's work on the messaging functionality for this app. So with the text view selected, we'll open the action flow editor. Alright, so let's move over to our Supabase project. And for messages, we need to create a new table. And this new table will be named messages. And we need to add a few more columns. So the first column will be the actual message text itself. So we can just name it message text. And this column will be of type text. The next one we want to add is the sender ID, the UID of the user who sent the message. And for this, it will be a UUID. And lastly, it will be the recipient ID. So this will be the chat ID. Oops, I spelled recipient wrongly. And lastly, it will be the recipient ID. So this basically will be the chat ID where the user sends the message to. And this will be of type int8 since our chat ID is of type int8. So let's click on save and we'll create this Supabase table for our messages over here. So now that we've created this messages table, let's move over back to our FlutterFlow dashboard. And with the text view selected, we'll open the action flow editor. And now with the onSubmit action selected, we'll first add a conditional action to check whether or not our text field is empty when the user submits it. Because if the text field is empty when the user submits it, we don't want to add a new empty row into our Supabase table. So for our condition, we'll set it as under conditions, we'll set it as a single condition. And for the first value, we want to check if our widget state and our text field is set and not empty. That means if there's something in our text field. And confirm. And if there is something in our text field, then we want to add a new action and we'll search for Supabase, and for this we want to insert a new row into our one more thing I forgot to do is that because we created a new table in our Supabase project over here, we have to scroll down on the left over here and we have to go to settings and integrations, and under integrations we'll go to Supabase and we have to get schema once more so that we update our FlutterFlow and Supabase connection. So going back to the widget tree and going back to our action flow editor for our text field over here, for insert row, you want to insert a row into our messages table and we'll set some fields. So the first field that we want to set is the message text. This value will be set to our widget state and whatever the user types into their text field. Next will be the sender ID, and this value will basically just be the authenticated user's user ID. And lastly, we want to set the value of the recipient ID, and this recipient ID will just be the chat ID. However, we have not passed the chat ID inside our page parameters yet, so we must close this and we have to add a new page parameter to our chat page. So for our chat page, we need to add a new parameter, and this parameter will be the chat ID. Oops, it must be in camel case. So the chat ID will be of type integer, and we'll click on confirm. You can see that there are more errors over here with passing parameters. If we go back to our home page over here and under the container over here, we select one container over here under the list view and we open the action flow editor and we need to pass the chat ID, and we need to pass the value of the chat rows, and it'll be this ID over here. We click on close. There are 3 more errors over here. There's one more error with passing parameters. We click on this. We can see that this error occurs because whenever we create a new group, we are trying to navigate to our chat page over here, but we are unable to pass the chat ID since we do not even know the chat ID yet, as Supabase automatically creates and allocates a chat ID once we created a new row in Supabase. So it's impossible for us to pass this chat ID inside our create group components over here. So we have to change the action flow a bit over here. Instead of navigating to the chat page, we'll just have to delete this navigate to option. And after inserting the row and creating a new row in Supabase, what we want to do is just to navigate to our home page instead of our chat page. So now that we close that, we can see that the error for passing parameters is gone. There's one more error over here, which is for the add contact page. So same as the last create group component, instead of navigating to the chat page, we want to instead navigate to the home page instead. So now the error is gone, and let's just close this. And we have one final error over here. If you click on it, now we can set our recipient ID to our chat ID page parameter. And now all the errors should be resolved. And now for the false parts, if our text field is empty, we can just give the user a message. So we can add an action and we can search for information alert dialog. So the informational dialog, the title can be please type in something. And we'll just close this, and now we should be done with our message over here. Okay, so now let's actually deal with displaying our messages sent to this chat group in this middle section over here. So actually, instead of this column over here, we want to right click on this column widget and actually replace this widget instead with a list view. And for this list view, we want to add a backend query to this list view. And the query type will be a Supabase query. And for the table, we want to query the messages table over here. And for the filters, we want to filter for all the messages where our recipient ID is equal to our chat ID. Basically, we want to get all the messages which is sent to this chat. So if we click on confirm, you can see that we have multiple different messages now. So now let's change the sender name, this body text, and as well as this timestamp over here. So for the sender name text, you want to change this text. And if we click on messages row, we see that we do not have access to the sender name, only the sender ID. So what we can do is that when our chat page first loads, we can click on the chat page and we can add an action to this. So when our chat page first loads, we can do a query, and you want to do a Supabase query rows. So we want to query our user data so that whenever the page first loads, we have access to all the user data. So we have access to all the user data for all the members inside our chat group so that we can access the user data easily. So we can add one filter, and we will filter for where our UID is inside. And now we have to add one additional page parameter, which is our chats, the chat members column over here. So we have to close this for now. And with our chat page selected, we want to edit our page parameters and add a new page parameter, and this will be the chat members. Oops, camel case once more. Chat members. So it'll be of type string, and for this it'll be a list. So click on confirm. You can see that we have an error, which is passing parameters over here. So if we click on passing parameters, we have to pass the newly created chat member page parameters. So for this value, it will simply be the chat row, and it will be the chat members list over here. So we can click on confirm. And now we go back to our Supabase database action arrow over here. And now we'll filter for where our UID is inside our chat members list. And for this action output variable name, we'll give it the name of members data. So we'll close this for now, and now we can access our chat members data, user data, wherever we want inside this page itself. So for the text property for the sender name, we'll scroll all the way down to action outputs, and we'll select the members data action output from our query. So we want to check if and filter for the list items. So you want to filter the list items, and our filter condition will be a single condition. So for the first value, this first value will be our messages row and our sender ID. So we want to check if our sender ID is equal to item in list, and we're going to check if for the where the sender ID is equal to the UID of the members data. So if we click on confirm, so basically what this filter does is that it only gets the user data of our sender ID. So it gets the user data of our sender only. For available options for this, we want to select item and index, and we want to select the first item since there's only one item, but Supabase and FlutterFlow is not smart enough yet to know that there's only one item over here. And for the Supabase row field, we'll want to select the name field over here. For default value, variable value, we can just give it as a space. So we click on confirm, and now you can see that now this is the sender name over here. Now the body text is not that complicated since it's just the body text of the message. So this text variable over here will just be the messages row, and it will be the message text. Default variable of space. And now for this timestamp over here, it's also not as complicated. It'll just be the messages row, and it'll be the creator at timestamp. For this creator at timestamp, we can give it a datetime format. And for this format, we can select any one you want, but I'll just go for the JM format to give it a time. Default variable value of 0 can be allocated to it. So we can click on confirm, and this should be done. For one more thing, for this text message, we can align it to the left so that it starts from over here. So one more thing that we can add is that you can see how there is a difference between text from other people and text from the user themselves. So we want to create two different types of text, one from other people and one from the user themselves. So in order to do that, we can wrap our text container in a conditional builder over here. So we want to add a condition to our conditional builder, and under the if condition, we want to check if for a single condition, and this condition will be if our messages row and the sender ID, if the sender is equal to our authenticated user ID. So basically all this does is that it checks if the message is being sent by the user themselves, and if it's true, it'll return this green container. If not, it'll return something else over here, which we will set now. So under the else condition, what we can do is that we can actually just right click on this container that we've already built, and we can copy our green text bubble, and under the else component, and we'll just paste it into this else component over here. But now let's just change a bit of stuff over here. With the container selected, we don't want this to be green now. We want to change our fill color to be a sort of gray. Let's choose the alternate gray. For messages sent by other people, we also want it to not be aligned to the right, but instead be aligned to the left. So under the alignment property, padding and alignment, we'll select the left alignment over here. And one more thing that we want to add is this circle icon over here to show the profile pic of the person. So with the container selected, we'll right click on the container and we'll wrap the container inside a row over here. And inside the row, we'll add one more widget, which is a circle image. So first, let's decrease the diameter of the circle image to 30. And we'll move the circle image up to the top of the row so that it goes to the left over here. For the row, we want the circle image to be aligned to the bottom together with this bubble over here. So for cross-axis alignment, we'll select at the end so that the circle image is below now. And we also want to add some bottom padding to the circle image so that it's in line with our text bubble of 8. And let's also add some left padding of 8 as well. Alright, so for the circle image path, we want to change this path, this default image path over here. Instead, we want to choose action outputs, members data once again. And we want to filter list items for a single condition once more. And this first value will be the same thing. It will be our messages row sender ID and is equal to our item in list UID. Confirm this. So this filter condition is exactly the same. For available options, we will once more choose item and index, and it will be first since there's only one item. But now for the Supabase row fields, we want to choose the profile image path since we are passing the image path of the sender over here. So we can click on confirm. And now this image should be the sender's profile image. So basically, yep, that's it for our messaging function. And now we can test it out in our test mode now. Alright, so test mode is just loaded up. And unfortunately, we have an error over here, which is an unexpected null value error. So usually when we have null value errors, it's usually because a variable which is supposed to be set has not been set. So if we move over to our FlutterFlow, back to our FlutterFlow dashboard over here, and if we check out the home page, you can see that in our Supabase table, our last message as well as our last message timestamps are both null over here. So let's just check out our last message first. See if there's anything wrong here. And for the default variable value, we initially set it to a space, but actually FlutterFlow recognizes the space over here as the default variable value as also a null value. So instead of a space, we'll just give it a new default variable value of last message sent for now. Oh, and one more thing that we can add is we can add a max characters allowed, so that if the text is too long, such as this, hi, this is very long, we can add the ellipsis over here and just cut off the text. So let's just add a max characters allowed of 20. And for text overflow replacement, we'll choose ellipsis. So that's just a little UI design. And one more thing that we have to add to our app as well in our chat page is that we should add a little send button over here so that the user is able to send their message. So if we scroll down, the row selected, let's just add one more icon. And for this icon, it will be a send icon. So let's just choose this send icon over here. And we will take our action flow editor over here. We will cut this whole action chain from our text field over here, and we'll insert it into this icon over here whenever the user presses send. So you'll cut and paste our whole action chain into this one over here. So now let's try reloading our test mode once more, and let's see if now it works and the error is gone. So our home page has successfully loaded and we took care of the null value error. Let's try going into one of our chats, Apple for Life. You can see that the profile image and the title of the chat group has been successfully shown over here. Now there are some problems with the UI design of the app bar as well as this bottom section over here, but we'll deal with that later. And now let's try typing in a message, hello. And if we click this send button, you can see that nothing happens over here. But if we go to our Supabase table, unfortunately nothing happened, and the row was also not inserted into our Supabase table, and that's because I actually forgot that to disable row level security in your Supabase table messages table over here. So that was an error on my part. So we have to edit the table and we have to disable row level security. Click on confirm and we click on save. So it's important to disable row level security when you are testing or when you are first prototyping. So if we do that, we go back to our FlutterFlow dashboard. Under settings and integrations, we go to Supabase and we get schema once more. We should see that now we are able to test our test mode and access our messages table to be able to insert rows, read rows, as well as delete rows whenever necessary. Now let's try going into our Apple for Life chat group once more. And if we type in hello, and now let's try sending the message. So nothing happened again, but if we go into our Supabase table, we see that the row has indeed been inserted with our message text over here. And why nothing happened over here is because we forgot to update our list view over here. So with the send icon selected, after we insert the row over here, one more action that we have to add is that we have to add the refresh database request action so that the list view is able to update the UI. And for the widget selected, we will select the list view widget. We also have to add one more action, and this is more of a user experience thing, is to clear the text fields and pin codes. So we can clear our text field so that the user is able to enter a new message. So now if we close this and once more we reload our test mode, we should see that all works well now, hopefully. And you can see that when we are loaded, we see the hello text message over here. Let's try typing in another message. And now if we send it, you can see that it's immediately reflected in the UI over here. We also have to add the functionality to the back button, so let's do that really quickly. So back in our FlutterFlow dashboard, with our back icon selected, we'll open the action flow editor and we'll just say navigate back. Now let's see what happens if we log out of our current account and go to another account. So this account is also inside the Apple for Life group chat. And if we go inside the Apple for Life group chat, we can see that since this user did not send any message but received messages from the previous user, so these messages are in gray now and the user profile picture is over here. If we try to send a message, we can see that this time this message is in green. And that shows that our message functionality works in our FlutterFlow app using Supabase. Alright, so that's it for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. Although there were some problems and errors in this video, I hope that it showed you the process that I usually go through when trying to solve errors, and I hope that you can learn from it as well. I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you and goodbye.